Today's video is brought to you by Audio. This is the new Tamron 17-70mm lens for Fujifilm's X mount. Could this be the perfect all-purpose lens? Let's find out. Hi everyone and welcome to Pal to Tech. Today we're talking about the new 17-70mm f2.8, and here's the rest of that crazy long name, the Di3A VC-RXD. Now I've had this lens with me non-stop for about a month now in a variety of different shooting situations and locations. Before we continue, a disclaimer. Tamron did send me this lens hoping that I would test and review it on the channel, but just like always, this review is completely independent. Tamron did not pay me to do this review, nor were they involved in its creation, and they were not allowed to see this video until it's now been published. As I got to remove the lens from that pretty white box, the first thing I noticed was that the lens itself contains two rings, one to adjust the focal length and the other to adjust focus. The focus ring is closer to the camera than the zoom ring. There is no aperture ring on the lens itself. Instead, you adjust the aperture using the front command dial of the camera. This is exactly the opposite of how Fuji does it with their zoom lenses, where they put the focus ring all the way in the front and then the zoom ring is in the back. And it took me a few days of getting used to this way of doing it. The price of the lens as of the date of this video is $800. It's mostly solid plastic with metal construction on the mount end. You also get the included lens hood. Now the lens is weather sealed for water resistance, but it's not waterproof. The lens weighs 525 grams, and this has made it a great travel lens for me. It really feels light and featherweight, especially when compared to the 16-55 Fuji non-zoom. I took this lens to New York with me during the Fuji X Summit, and it traveled very nicely. I was crammed in, right, with the lens all the way in the back of the airplane like a sardine in coach on Delta, and this lens was banged up, against aircraft windows for shooting. I dropped it on and off of TSA security bins, all of that, and it still held up really, really well. It has 9 rounded aperture blades and contains 16 elements in 12 groups. And this lens will give you a focal range of 17 to 70 millimeters. Now that's the full frame equivalent of about 25.5 to 105 millimeters. Clearly, it's designed to compete with Fujifilm's 16 to 80 millimeter lens. The maximum aperture range on this lens is f2.8 throughout every single focal range, with the minimum aperture range being f22. Now the minimum focus distance at the 70 millimeter end of the zoom is 39 centimeters. But get this, while at the 17 millimeter focal length, your minimum focus distance is 19 centimeters. I have always said that a zoom lens with this variety of focal range is always about compromise. And I tried to keep that in mind when testing with this lens. However, there wasn't much compromise. This is a very good lens. It has fairly good sharpness and decent contrast throughout. Let's now take a look at image quality. I like the background and bokeh you can get with this lens. It looks great. Look at this. Zoomed into 100% right here. We are at f3.2, and it's so great to be able to pull back all the way to 17 millimeters to get that wide angle. It definitely comes in handy when you're walking around New York and you want to get as much in the frame as possible. I really like the colors I was able to get with this lens. It struck a really nice balance between not too muted, but not too oversaturated pop colors. I even decided to see how it would handle in really low light, high ISO. Here it is at ISO 2500. Here we are at ISO 2000 at 20 millimeters. Again, being able to zoom in to 70 millimeters and then pull back is so nice when you're walking through a city or somewhere where there's all kinds of variety of architecture. Here's a straight out of camera raw file at 17 millimeters at ISO 1250. And I just love the way it handles the colors. And here we are back to f2.8. And as you can see, you have this really nice pleasing background and subject isolation. And speaking of the areas of the image shot at different focal lengths that are either soft or sharp, let's take a look now. Okay, here we are zoomed in at 70 millimeters at f2.8. And at 100% it looks fairly good. Zoomed in 200%, it's still pretty sharp at that focal range, at that aperture. There's a lot less contrast at f2.8 that starts to get better as you stop down the lens. By the time you get to f4, the contrast is great. Until you get to about f18 and the center is not quite so sharp sharp anymore. Look at this. I think the sweet spot for this lens is somewhere between f5.6 and f6.3. Now at 17 millimeters at f2.8, it still looks really good in the center. Have a look at this. I'm zoomed in 200% here. As I stop down the lens, it looks great until we get to about f14. Then it starts to lose contrast and get soft. Now I want you to look at the corners at 17 millimeters, okay? Have a look at this. I'll zoom in 200%. Look at that. Now there is some vignetting that's going on. You see that? As I'm switching from f2.8 to f3.2 to f3.5 to f4, and I'll go fast. Look, look, look. Little bit of vignetting going on. If I'm switching back and forth between them, it's pretty noticeable. If I zoom into the corners at 17 millimeters, I'm at f2.8. I will now stop down the lens. They look pretty good, nice and sharp. And it still looks pretty good even at f22. I saw very little purple fringing on this lens at all. In fact, almost none. Overall, I think the image quality of this lens and what you can get at the various focal lengths is wonderful. I would say even outstanding, considering the price of the lens and the fact that you can go all the way from 17 millimeters to 70 millimeters. Before we continue, I'd like to mention a word from our sponsor, Audio. Audio is a music subscription service that offers a highly curated catalog of music and sound effects that you can use in your projects. Now, the Pro license doesn't just cover YouTube, but services from video games to podcasts to films to basically most all video projects you may need music or sound effects for. The website has great layout and organization, and I love how you can use these filters and drill down into exactly the kind of music or sound effects that you want. For example, I only want to see music right here that has claps and snaps in it. They feature over 6,000 quality music tracks and 30,000 sound effects. And when you download them, you are cleared for commercial use and they're yours to keep forever. They are now offering annual access for their Audio Pro plan for up to 70% off. This knocks the price down to $59.70 for the year or $4.90 for the month. So head over to the link that I will have in the description down below and use the code PALDETECH70 at checkout to get this very special discount now. Now, something to keep in mind about the minimum focus distance of this lens. If you have it set to 17 millimeter focal length, right, and you have your minimum focus distance of 19 centimeters, it will look great. Your subject will be perfectly in focus and sharp. It'll look wonderful. However, if you set the focal length to 70 millimeters, then you go to your minimum focus distance of 39 centimeters, it's not going to look so good. The subject is going to be soft. Check this out. Here I am at 17 millimeters focal length with my minimum focus distance of 19 centimeters. And as you can see, it's nice and clear and sharp. Look at that. Look how great that looks. But watch what happens when I switch over to 70 millimeters. When I zoom in, look at that. It's soft. You see that right there? You're always better off sticking with 17 millimeters. Now, when it comes to autofocus, particularly face-eye auto detect, I found that this lens could keep up pretty much with what a Fuji lens could do. It worked great. Here it is trying to lock onto my subject, and for the most part, it nailed the shots. It didn't nail all of them, but it nailed most of them. Same thing with a subject moving right toward me. Overall, it was able to capture the subject and stick with the subject. Now, with regard to video performance on this lens, there is not much focus breathing. However, there is one big issue for video shooters. This lens is not parfocal, okay? Now, parfocal means that a lens stays in focus when you're zooming in and zooming out, but this lens does not do that. Have a look at this. You see how I'm zooming in and zooming out of the Empire State Building? Look at what's happening to the focus while I'm doing that. So you absolutely cannot zoom in and zoom out while you're using this lens for video. It will not look right. But if you're not zooming and you're just using autofocus, the autofocus mechanism on this lens is quiet, and that is a really nice feature to have. Also, this lens has its own built-in stabilization. I tested this out on an X-T3, which has no IBIS, as you know. So once you attach the lens to your camera, if you go into the little camera setting, you will see that IS mode is enabled, and you could either set it for continuous, shooting only, or off. Now, the image stabilization on this lens works very well if you're standing in one place holding the lens, like this. Check out the difference here. Here it is without image stabilization, and here it is with image stabilization. You see that? Once the stabilization has been turned on, it looks much better. But it is less noticeable when I have it, say, zoomed in to 70 millimeters and I'm walking with the lens. There's not a huge amount of difference between having the stabilization turned off or not. But overall, I think it's wonderful that a third-party lens for Fuji has included image stabilization that talks to the camera. This is a great feature that I hope becomes a trend for other third-party Fuji lenses. Regarding lens flaring, I didn't notice much of that at all. Yeah, there was a little bit of it, but certainly not a deal breaker. And for what this lens gives you, I would rack that up as a non-issue. Now, as far as a travel lens is concerned, this lens pretty much nails everything I'd ever want in a single lens for get up and go, one lens only photography. It's a fantastic lens for everyday photo and video shooting. So where does this lens fit in exactly? Well, I returned Fujifilm's 16-80mm lens as my copy had some serious focus wobbling issues. So I couldn't do a direct comparison between the Tamron and the Fuji 16-80. They are both the same price, so really it can come down to what focal range is good for you. The Fujifilm 16-80 has better build quality, and it's smaller and more compact overall. And you're getting slightly more focal range with the 16-80. However, because of the focus breathing issues that I ran into, I do recommend this Tamron lens over the Fuji 16-80. But keep in mind, I have not tested a 16-80 recently, and the tests that I ran were done right when that lens first came out. But, however, when you compare it to the 16-55, okay, or even the 18-55, now it comes down to focal range. With the 16-55mm lens, you are getting better image quality, better optics, and you're also getting a dedicated aperture ring. Remember, this Tamron lens does not have a dedicated aperture ring, but you are paying $400 more for the Fujifilm 16-55, and given the weight of this thing, a lightweight travel lens, this is not. You'd be better off getting the Tamron and then taking the $400 that you saved and going out and getting an additional 35mm prime lens to go with it if you do need that special extra optical quality at a specific focal range. If you travel a lot and you need something that can capture a huge variety of shooting situations, has very decent, in fact, really good image quality, very good autofocus, minimal focus breathing, and can handle most video shooting situations thrown at it, now get the Tamron. You will not be disappointed. But if you honestly don't think you're going to go much beyond 18-55mm focal range, you could save $100 and get the Fujifilm 18-55, which is an incredible lens for the price, and you're getting that dedicated aperture ring as well. All of that being said, if a dedicated aperture ring is not that important to you, well, then the flexibility of being able to go from 17 to 70 millimeters without having to change lenses, its ability to talk to the camera electronically and to use its autofocus system, and of course, the fact that it only weighs 525 grams, I would definitely give the Tamron 17 to 70mm lens some serious consideration. It is an outstanding third-party, all-around zoom lens for Fujifilm's X mount. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you found the video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I'm going to be signing off now, but have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you in a new video next week. Take care.